When a drug is ingested or given, it simply has to go through metabolic processes to have its effect. And that processing is where the nutrients can be utilized or depleted, but typically it's a depletion by conversions and so forth.
Howdy everybody, and welcome to episode 170 of the SuperSetYourLife.com podcast, your weekly dose of entertainment, education, and inspiration to fuel your life inside and beyond the gym. We are joined today by the Vice President of MIDSOUTH Transitions Medical Group to discuss the truth about drug-induced nutrients deficiencies and why we need as athletes to stay out of the hospital and how exactly to go about doing that. Sean has 32 years of pharmaceutical experience starting at age 12 when his family of health professionals encouraged him to begin volunteering at a local hospital and worked his way into his first pharmacy technician job at Baylor Regional Medical Center in Grapevine, Texas. Sean's consulting work and drug investigations with Massachusetts General Hospital, Ear and Eye Infirmary, and Harvard Medical School have been featured on the radio and on television, and now we're bringing his content to the podcast community where his message really needs to be heard even more. Having founded several private pharmaceutical ventures, Sean is passionate about formulating complex solutions for challenging medical issues, thriving on finding new and improved ways to help people improve their health, wellness, and quality of life. Few things bring him more satisfaction than helping patients obtain maximum health while at the same time upholding sustainable business practices. We connected originally a couple months ago when he heard my interview on Bart K's main channel, and we've been coaching him through his meat-based nutrition hypertrophy training plan so that he can continue to excel in the good work that he does and grow some bigger muscles while he's at it. Sean, shall we pray before we start, sir?
Absolutely, yes.
All right. Would you like to please read from 2 Corinthians chapter 9, verses 6 through 8?
For sure, my friend.
Cool.
Remember this, the person who sows sparingly will also reap sparingly, and the person who sows generously will also reap generously. Each person should do as he or her decided in his or her heart, not out of regret or out of necessity, for God loves a cheerful giver, and God is able to make every grace overflow to you, so that in every way, always having everything you need, and you may excel in every good work.
Thanks, Sean.
No problem.
Dear God, Master of the universe, bless this conversation as we try our best every single day to sow generously with the good work that you've called us to do, and that those listening would hear something practical today to apply into their own lives, that together, collectively, we may honor you with our health, our mindset, and our actions. Thank you for Sean, for all he does, and the fellowship that we have worshiping you. Amen.
Yes, absolutely. In Jesus' name. Yes.
Amen.
Absolutely.
Sean, welcome to the show. Tell our listeners who you are, man. What inspired you to get into the medical field in the first place?
Awesome. Yeah. So, I have a familial history of my uncle and my mother specifically in healthcare. I also had some genealogical folks who were physicians, and amongst other things in life. So it was kind of like a natural fit, like a hand in a glove. I started off early in life at 12, like you'd said, junior volunteering at a hospital in which my uncle was a hospital administrator at, after moving from Kansas to Texas in the mid 80s. And my grandmother was a regular volunteer at that hospital, where her son was the administrator. And she's like, I don't want you becoming a couch potato. So you're going to come over here, you're going to junior volunteer. I'm like, okay, sure, why not? So essentially, that's how I got the first taste for hospital stuff. I worked in medical records, filing charts before there was electronic charts, old paper things that were sometimes thick as the War and Peace novels that some in our past have read. But anyhow, that's what I did. Then my parents bought a house in Grapevine, Texas in the mid 80s. Shortly thereafter,
And where is Grapevine? I apologize. Is it like Dallas area, Houston?
Dallas Fort Worth is a suburb of Dallas and Fort Worth. It's right in between, more towards Dallas way slightly, but it's actually a very good community. Uh, I've been here, but it was still a smaller town, so that's kind of cool. Uh, Off and on through the years and so forth, but yeah. So I volunteered at the hospital where my mother had a employment. She was employed there, Grapevine, and she's like, "Well, I want you to continue to volunteer." And I'm like, "Okay, sure, why not?" And I started working in radiology, developing films and processing films before there was all digital. This is way before the more analog type of things. So another aspect of healthcare. Found it nice. Got my first job at 16 in a hospital, the same hospital, in fact, sweeping floors, doing housekeeping, and handling biohazardous fluids, and, like blood products and waste and stuff. And back then, now they don't let that happen anymore, but that's kind of where it was. Then the pharmacy director, when I was about 17 years old, he knew I was a reliable guy. He says, "I know you're trustworthy and you're smart enough. Basically, would you like to get a job as a technician?" And I'm like, "Sure. What's the pay?" And he said, "Well, this." And I said, "Oh, that makes me about $2 or $3 more an hour." And I'm like, "Hey, I'm great at that." Yeah, because I had a 1985 Firebird I used to run around in high school in, trying to look like Mr. Joe Cool, and it helped fuel that furnace and trying to basically go race hard and go after the girls.
What year did you say it was?
It was 1985 Firebird. It was had a V8 305 engine in it. It was baby blue. It was already run through the ringers back then, but
Whew, I just pulled up a picture. That's beautiful.
I love those cars, man. The Firebird were the bomb, and I ran that thing through the mill. I raced that thing like crazy, and it eventually kaput. But so I got the job in healthcare, making more money as a pharmacy technician. And the funny thing was, it was very natural to me, and I didn't know my head from my rear end on how to do pharmacy. I had no idea what it was, but it came so natural. I was able to learn brand names and generic names of drugs, and it just came in the chemistry and how it just all jived together in that business. It was so natural, just to be easy and lack of words. But that being said, here we are, flash forward 32 years later. I've been in so many different aspects of pharmacy. Basically, any kind there has been. I've done high risk pharmaceutical compounding, like you had mentioned with Harvard Medical School in Boston, Ear and Eye Infirmary. That I did some drug studies. I've done 6 of those, and where I was the pharmacy preparation specialist, and that's some deep dives and very sophisticated stuff. You have to be very acute on that. I've changed people's lives with eye shots. I used to compound a shot that would save their vision. I didn't create the drug, but I created a package that went basically all over the 50 states. And I was paid handsomely for that at the time.
Wow.
It's not about it's not about the money or what I've done and my accomplishments. I really don't amount to anything. The biggest thing for me was how I impacted people's lives. And along the process of not only doing pharmaceutical compounding and the 32 years plus in the industry, I had a passion to help people with nutrients. And because my own interesting discoveries, because I used to consume as a younger man a lot of alcohol. I'll just be free and admit it. I was always having the hangovers and these things. I'm like, how can I beat a hangover kind of thing? And so I got into nutraceuticals. I eventually created
Bloody Marys, right? Isn't that what fixes a hangover?
Yeah, to some degree, but
that always made me feel better. I'm sorry. Let's stay on topic.
You're good, brother. You're good. It's totally cool. I mean, there is a thing about drunk. I think the terminology "drunk back sober" or something like that. But in the process, you lose the vitamins. Even in the day, there's IV bags of B vitamins and multivitamins you get if you were in a really severe state. But what I discovered is I knew how to do it on an oral basis through nutraceutical replenishment, and then that fueled the fire. Okay, I read a book. This is like 25 years ago. called The Nutritional Cost of Drugs, written by James Laval, who is a pharmacist and a certified clinical nutritionist, and Ross Pelton. He is deceased. He's also he was a physician. But those two opened this world of drug-induced nutrient depletions to me, and I'm like, oh my God, what is going on here? And it's not about alcohol and how that depletes. Yes, it will do that. But even the medications people are on to treat certain conditions like hypertension or high blood pressure, those are doing the same things. Or those who have high cholesterol drugs, we're going to dive into that, I'm sure, because that's one of my major passions, obviously, how they deplete essential vitamins and enzymes and things like that in our body when they are processed simply in the human body. It's like, my gosh, they're killing us too. But it's not to say the drugs are bad. It's just because there's always a time and place. But the problem is we're still on a deficiency status, and that's not cool. So that made me become a super specialist in this arena, because it aligned with my passions. And I still go to this day, and I will go forward even when the medical practice, which I'm a partner in at MidSouth. We do this chronically on a pretty frequent basis for the patients who are entrusted to our care, to make sure that, okay, there's not some of this, because part of our practice, and again, I'm not trying to highlight the practice, but for reference. All right. So essentially what MidSouth was doing when we created it almost 5 years ago, was we're going after the patient who is at high risk to readmit to a hospital. And there's a lot of factors that go into that, from financials, but that's not the most important, but they just keep going back to the hospital. And that's not good stewardship for the system of healthcare system, even though it's fractured, nor is it good for the patient themselves, obviously, which is first and foremost. So what we did is we created a medical house calls telemedicine company that also put together, where we had clinical pharmacy team inside the medical practice, which I and another partner of mine were in the pharmacy side of it, trying to make sure medical outcomes, prescriptive type outcomes. And then I dove further into it with saying, okay, there's induced nutrient depletions going on when you're prescribing the medications. Now, are the medications necessary? Yeah, absolutely. If they're that high risk to readmit and they have certain conditions. So I'm like, well, let's do a deeper dive. Let's go find out what a statin's doing to them. Okay. And then I would feed it to the providers who had the ability to treat the patients, and the providers are looking like rock stars. That's cool. And that's fine. It's not about the look. It's just, you're taking care of a person here, man. I mean, the life's on the line. You always remember who you're serving. And I could share another phraseology with that, and I will here in a second, probably, because I always do. But we also included it the medical practice when we created the concept of this. This is actually up and coming type of new age medicine, so to speak, integration. But it's not exactly everybody's catching on because of certain reasons. But we included dietitians in there who were like-minded, and then with the keto carnivore movements that you and I are both very familiar with, and then been personally changed our lives with, and many others out there, including physicians, the notorious, and God bless you, Bart K. You're a stud, sir. Just got to say, man. Amen. And Ken Berry, dude, geez, man. Amen. Yeah. Again. I can't ignore it. There's many more out there. Detailed naming, but yeah, they are the rock stars. But that being said, we are utilizing that through our practice to change people's lives, man. And that's the whole point. There was a saying that I read in a book. I didn't really read it at the time. It was written by a dealership in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, Sewell Village, which is a 100-year-old plus car dealership that sells Cadillacs and many other brands of vehicles. But they started off back in the 1900s selling Cadillacs when they were first made, like Model T type of stuff. Anyway, so the great grandson, his name is Carl Sewell. He wrote a book, this is probably now 15, 20 years ago, called Service from the Heart. And this book, in the sentence I'm about to reveal, or the phrase, I didn't want to read, but I was forced to read it by my employer, and I did. But it changed my whole dynamic, and it kept me more missional minded. It just changed everything, man. It was so much of a game
I'm
changer.
writing that name. It was Service to Lead.
Service from the Heart.
Service
Carl,
from the Heart.
yes, Carl Sewell, Service from the Heart. He wrote a book, and the filler behind it, because I'm a big motivational speaker type of guy, like Brendan Burchard. Again, not plugging, but I really like the modality and the thoughts behind it, because we all have to have, as much as we can, optimized thought processes to keep us going in whatever we do. But back to Sewell. So Carl said, I'm not in the car business. I'm in the people business. I just happen to sell cars. And then he said on the second sentence, to an extent, everybody's in the people business. You just fill in the blanks of what you really do and where your skill sets are. And I'm like, oh my God, that was like revelational for me. So I plugged that back all in. And I said this very purposefully to say, okay, that's how it aligned with my drug-induced nutrient depletion passion, and how I like to share it going forward. And I can't stop, to be real.
So, how are nutrient depletions caused by the use of medicinal drugs?
Well, the simple way to put it is this: is when a drug is ingested or given, it simply has to go through metabolic processes to have its effect. And in that process, conversions and exchanges that keep it simple kind of deal. And that processing is where the nutrients can be utilized or depleted, but typically it's a depletion by conversions and so forth. Like, for example, there's a class of drug called thiazide diuretics. It's used for treating hypertension. It's a diuretic will make you pee a lot, basically, whether it's sparing potassium or non-potassium sparing in its classes. There are subclasses of classes. But thiazide diuretics
Sorry to cut you off. Sorry to cut you off. I might do this from time to time just to make sure that I'm tracking.
Sure.
Kind of like how if you overhydrate, that'll actually flush out your electrolytes, and that's why you need to supplement more electrolytes. But if you just don't overhydrate and you drink so that your water isn't crystal clear and it's not straw yellow, but it's and it's not dark yellow, but it's a straw yellow, you know that you're consuming enough so that you're consuming what your body needs, but not too much to where you're fucking up nutrients. Is it kind of the same thing?
Yeah, it's kind of the same thing for sure. And then you have the mechanisms of actions on different drugs and subclasses or classes into subclasses. But like this one, the thiazide diuretics, they work in the kidney specifically, and it does have an electrolyte, like you were alluding to, exchange, and how it gets rid of extra fluid. Like thiazide diuretics can deplete magnesium, which is essentially important, especially for it's actually much more essential than we know. It can be anti-inflammatory to a sense, like for asthmatics, it can help relax the inflammation inside the bronchial areas. Magnesium is essential for heart contractility and other essential functions in the body. So like those drugs, you're on them, as an example. It's not my top tier one. I'll get to the top tier one, man, which is my, like, I go to every time in here in a bit. But thiazide diuretics will typically deplete magnesium from the body. Well, that's not cool, because that magnesium is essential functions for a lot of processes, including bone health and heart health and brain health and lack of inflammation, like I just mentioned.
Yeah, sleep, go on and on.
Totally. And then also with that class, well, for the dudes, who are producing testosterone, it's an essential thing. Otherwise, we don't produce testosterone. Then we have atrophy, and then we don't have as much muscular energy. And, it's just a cascade of things. So essential depletions are a epidemic, really. It's unrecognized, or it's not got enough credibility to be fully recognized. And that's why I've gone after it like this. My practice and my years of participation in the pharmacy industry, it's like, okay, we got to do something about this. And that's why community pharmacies who do like compounding and are independent, they are essential if they're adequately trained into that deficiency stuff and they're aware of it, to help people out. Because people are like, well, my doctor did this and but I still feel like junk or something. Well, it's because the drugs are giving you more deficiencies. Sense. Now, that are the drugs bad? No, not necessarily. Now that
They're fixing problems with a Band-Aid, but they're causing more problems.
yeah, exactly. And then you have to go, okay, we'll prescribe another drug. Then we'll prescribe another drug because of this side effect. And that it's just not so cool. Now, you try to control the conditions. You got to look at always the risk versus the risk benefit ratio. And again, this is not, again, I'm not doing medical advice. Again, I'm not trying to do anything like that because I can't. But the end game is there needs to be recognition on what's going on. And a lot of physicians are not classically trained in nutrition. God rest them. That they are on the school for they're allopathic, treating diseases, which is what is supposed to be done. But is it the full picture? And the answer is clearly no. I mean, Ken Berry has even done a video on one time. He did a nutrient depletion thing, a segue into it. And so he, with his space, is very much aware of the obstacles there. Now, can one physician dive on this heavily? No, because our healthcare system typically doesn't allow it because of time. And so time is a commodity in their book. And so they have to see 40, 50 patients a day in order to take care of business. And it's not enough time to deep enough dive. That's another reason why MidSouth was created, is because in that capacity, we have longer visit times with the patients because of the type of patient we're taking care of. And we do deeper dives. And so that's why this drug-induced nutrient clinical screenings is correlated and should be in every medical practice, primary care all the way to specialist, in my opinion, to do this, to help people out and say, okay, this is the reason it's causing these other things out here.
That sounds like the responsible route. Yeah. Okay.
Integration is the key. So, my biggest pet peeve is not because statins, which are the ones that lower cholesterol and correct ratios of bad, so to speak, cholesterol, which and we won't go down that dive, but LDL cholesterol, it can correct some ratios and triglyceride ratios depending on which formulation you get and which mechanisms it works on. But the key is on the class of statins, no matter which one anybody is on, it's got to be, it's going to, well, let me reflect this. The class of statins will deplete an essential cellular coenzyme Q10 that is essential to the mitochondria, means the powerhouse of the cell, the energy factory. If you don't have the mitochondria, your cell will die. And you modify that multiple millions of times to an organelle, i.e., let's take, for instance, the heart. Okay, a heart's a big muscle composed of millions of cells. When you try to take a drug, or you're taking a drug to basically depletes energy out of a muscular system, because coenzyme Q10 is essential to make the mitochondria work. Well, that being said, without being over scientific about it, if you don't have that enzyme, your cells will die. It's a matter of fact, and it's called rhabdomyolysis. It's terrible. It's a painful muscle waste, is the conversion from Latin to English, basically. And if you're taking a drug to treat cholesterol, which I have my own opinion about that, then you're basically killing yourself faster in a slower rate, but on a faster slope. I don't know if that makes sense, but it's steeper. And so why am I going to take a drug that will essentially end up giving me a painful death in a muscular sense and other conditions I'll experience along the way? Well, to me, that doesn't make sense as a person being in the industry of pharmacy. Now, am I saying statins are evil? No, there are some people that metabolically must be on them for a spell. Do I think there's a solution in my opinion? No, I don't. I think the carnivorous, keto-carnivorous, or ketogenic way is the true pathway to health. I can testify on myself.
Wow.
1.5 years, I've lost 88 pounds of fat.
Hey everyone, Coach Taylor Milton here. Welcome to Skull Bells TV, the official YouTube channel of supersetyourlife.com, where you're going to discover a weekly upload of quick and easy to follow workout tutorials featuring Coach Colt, myself, or one of our athletes to keep your workouts fun, practical, and effective. Our family's latest keto carnivore recipes that fuel Colt's competitions and keep myself and our kiddos strong and healthy. Video uploads of the supersetyourlife.com podcast, now over 100 episodes, your weekly dose of entertainment, education, and inspiration to fuel your life inside and beyond the gym, and much more. Last thing before we get into the video, we're asking a big favor from you. This has been working beautifully, so if you would please think of someone you care about that would benefit from this video, go ahead and smash that like button, click the share button, and text this video to them. That would mean the world to us. And while you're at it, make sure you hit the subscribe button so you don't miss more exciting content from Skull Bells TV, because our team has lots of meat and lots of muscle coming your way, and I promise you won't want to miss it. When you hit the subscribe button, you'll see a bell icon pop up. You want to click that too so you're notified every time we release a new video. Thank you so much for the support. It means the world to us. Every like, share, and subscription helps our channel grow and supports our family's hard work. So thank you so much for doing your part too. That's all we ask. God bless you, and please enjoy this video.
So a statin drug, I think there's a time and place for it for certain people for a certain amount of time. Now, if I was going to try to solve the cholesterol and the LDLs, I wouldn't use a statin. If I was a provider, even, MD, DO, or a nurse practitioner or a PA, in my opinion, I would not go first line statin therapy, which is typically what happens, because as Dr. Berry and Bart Kay and many others have now revealed to us through evidence-based data, that the indicators of total cholesterol and LDL C and other lipoproteins are not true indicators of cardiovascular disease. And once I understood that through the papers and evidence presented to me and access that I have in pharmacy and healthcare as well, I am convinced that that is a factual statement. And so I wouldn't put, if I was a provider, a patient on a statin therapy. What I would do is, if I had to do it as a provider, I would include the coenzyme Q10 recommendation heavily because of the long-term effects of statins and that painful muscle wasting I alluded to earlier. Simply because you want to replenish coenzyme Q10 in a specific dosage in the right format. If you are in fact on a statin therapy, doesn't matter who you are, at what age. Typically, you're going to have a statin prescribed for you. Typically, there have been articles where pediatrics have been told to be put on statins. So I'm like, you're out of your mind.
Yeah.
But anyway, so typically you're over the age of 35. And the deal is, typically, if you are on a statin therapy, you definitely need the coenzyme Q10 to prevent that painful muscle wasting. And you need the right format. There's 3 to 4 different formats of coenzyme Q10 that are on the market, so to speak. When we talked earlier about conversions and how it changes from this to that, that's an important factor too. So that's where the nutrient depletions and so forth do tie in as well. Well, when patients are on a statin and they need to get coenzyme Q10 in the body, if you don't have the 1 or 2 formats, you're going to have to increase the quantity as far as like weight or metrics, like milligrams of the statin, so your body can convert it. But the efficiency of the body over at past age 35 to convert this specifically coenzyme Q10 from one state to another to the bioavailable, that's the key right there. It takes a lot of process, and therefore when we get more chronologically older, it's harder to convert because we're getting older. We're on a slow decaying cycle towards basically death. as we age. Fact of the matter. But you need
ever since the curse.
Yeah, well, I mean, it is, that's the way God has it is. We're just here for a few whispers at time. But okay, cool. So, what's the best format of CoQ10? Probably if you're like, well, get to the point, Sean. And the bottom line is this. So, anybody who needs any format of CoQ10 for any purpose, including the statin replenishments and the drug-induced nutrient depletion, is ubiquinol. Very key. That's the bioavailable format of coenzyme Q10 that's already converted and rapidly absorbed by the human cells, the mitochondria, as we were talking about earlier. And so, why would you not, as a provider, have knowledge thereof to go ahead and utilize CoQ10 if you put them on a statin therapy? Well, many providers aren't classically trained in that. Once again, not cool. The studies show this, and so like a very small amount of population. Well, that's just one aspect, because like Dr. Berry has pointed out many times, again, I'm not trying to feature him, but he's also very true in what he's saying from a scientific point of view. Bart will back it up too, man, that dude, you don't have a shortage of statins in your body. You have a process otherwise. We won't dive in that deep, but the end game is this. You have to have this for cellular health. And so anyways, that's the easy way to probably do it without doing a deeper dive, because I'm kind of like nerding out on that. I always do. But anyway, so basically bottom line, folks, is this. You're on statin therapy, any dose, any kind, you have to have at least 100 milligrams of coenzyme Q10 in the form of ubiquinol every day, routinely, to stave off at least this dysfunction and depletion. And it's probably better if you're a little bit higher on that. Ubiquinol is always the cheaper side of the CoQ10 products, but there are reputable sites that you don't have to pay $80 or $100 for this stuff. You can buy it for like $25 to $30 for a 30-day supply and be just fine. But if you have multiple drug therapies, oh, here we go, my friend. If you're on a statin drug and say a beta blocker, or which is another stuff again for a hypertension, one of the oldest, it's not in fact actually the oldest class of antihypertensive agents that are out there. Another one called metoprolol. I'm on that. Well, guess what? Coenzyme Q10 is depleted from that too. So you have multiple drug therapies, statin, metoprolol, which is very common in America. And by the way, you might be diabetic. You might be on a drug called metformin, which is actually fairly safe, but it depletes CoQ10 too. So we have three factors right there eliminating your CoQ10 stores. Well, what's going to happen? You're going to cascade the effect faster on a biological platform to potential painful muscle wasting. Not cool. So that's why I kind of got into that. I know I went on a deep dive on that, but that's one of my major players. It's like, okay, so basically everybody needs coenzyme Q10 if you're over the age of 35 in the form of ubiquinol, especially if you're on medications, as mentioned, like metformin, beta blocker like metoprolol, or others in their class. And of course, the fun statin family.
Wow.
And a lot of weightlifters. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I'm sorry. If you have something to finish, go ahead. But I was just going to ask what the relationship is between LDL and triglycerides in terms of how concerned we should be about heart disease, because LDL I know gets it can cause red flags, and that's always when my clients' doctors will go, "Hey, you have high LDL," and they'll go, "Okay, but my triglycerides are low, my heart rate's great. Here's what I look like. Here's my physique. I don't feel like I'm about to have like I have heart disease. Like they're like my age, and so I guess I'm just curious as to what your thoughts are and experiences are, and what you've seen with that relationship. Is high LDL necessarily a bad thing?
No, in my opinion, based on what I know and have been versed on, is LDL is not a true indicator of cardiovascular disease at this time. Although the paradigm, the treatment paradigms in the medical space will tell you this is what you go like like a tree, like a flow chart. Yes, you got to go A, B, C, D. And the reason they do that is like what Dr. Berry talks about again, is if they don't tree it out like that from a treatment point of view, they get in trouble. Insurance, possibly medical malpractice. And that's unfair. But when you look at it from a true metabolic point of view, the low triglycerides, the lower number is the better. That's a true predictor of cardiovascular disease. That's in fact, because that's dealing to hyperinflammatory processes and excessive deposits, so to speak, that can contribute to the overall process. So it's really, again, my concurrence is with Dr. Berry and friends that the low triglycerides, high LDL, whether it's the C or other formats of LDL, are LDL is not a true indicator. And to me, it can have influence, but that's probably more from what I understand. And I may be a little bit on a stretch here, but from what I understand, it may be more genetically tied to that, on top of what the contribution is, say, from a keto carnivore or a carnivore diet. But again, clientele and general populace, to me, I'm not going to worry about total cholesterol. I'm not going to worry about LDL. I would look at, again, the HDLs and the triglycerides. If those are optimized, and that means basically your triglycerides are below 150, hopefully, slightly lower just to be on the safer side, but not much lower than 150. And then also the HDLs being higher than probably towards the high end normal in the reference range. And I can't recall the reference range right now off the top of my head. That's going to be your better markers and outcomes of cardiovascular health. So the other numbers at one time and place may have had some indication, but that's kind of like old technology. So total cholesterol, again, LDL is now, in my opinion, insignificant in cardiovascular, determining if you're heart healthy or not, basically. And
touching back on our conversation last week, I think that Dr. Karen Berry would agree with you, huh? I know he's
yes,
done a lot of work on that.
He's proven me, and that's kind of how I became a student in that sense of, again, I'm not trying to endorse him, but I think he's really sound in what he is, what he does, and what he says. He's got a lot of evidence base, and I'm very, very solid on evidence-based medicines and protocols and so forth. He has convinced me scientifically enough. Again, with the Barquet, I know I hit up on those two names like crazy, but they're right. They are clinically and cellular wise even right. They've got the game. And so, and they've proven it. They have proof in the pudding. And
I don't think I've heard him say anything. Yeah, I don't think I've heard either of those gentlemen say anything about health that I disagree with or found to be false. But they've proven a lot of people false that I thought were right all along.
And I thought we have to have, like, as Barquet would say, what is the dietary requirements for carbohydrates in the human diet, the proper human diet, as Barry likes to say. Well, it's zero. Well, it's true. I mean, and when they broke it down from an anthropological all the way to science, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is a smackdown. It's just like, wow. And then yet in the hospitals, when we do interventional nutrition, we're calculating the macros on all three levels, protein, fat, and carbs. And they're putting the dominance on carbs. And I'm like, are you insane? No. And once you understand it, it's like, my God, why in the world would we put straight dextrose unless there's a super low sugar in the body just to kick it back up? But got the gluconeogenesis and all that fun stuff we won't dive into about it, but man, you don't really need it. And
yeah,
that's been how I dropped my 88 pounds, is cutting that back to where I'm basically at one point I started off at 100 grams or less a day of carbs total, regardless of what it is. It all is all going to go to the sugar side, no matter what, how it's converted, if it's whole grains or this or that. And then I converted down to 50, then to 20. And, outside this last week, which I kind of screwed up, but, essentially, I've been pretty much ketovore all the time. So it's like 10 grams a day of carbs or less. And that's coming from my protein shakes. Because the MREs is what I've kind of dove into lately for convenience. I try to really make my own stuff and get my fat and protein from that. I use heavy whipping cream and a protein shake that has like 1 gram of carbohydrate per scoop to like 30 grams of protein. But this timing with working in the hospital and everything, it's not always convenient to make it up, and then it's got a different flavor sometimes. But
yeah,
chocolate.
Redcon 1. That's a Redcon 1 product, right?
Yeah, I think so. I just know that it comes really easy when I go to the vitamin shop.
The MREs, yeah. Those are that's a good company. I've used a lot of their supplements over the years.
Yeah, and they actually have it where they're labeled, I believe, keto friendly. And there's another one called Jocko that I recently was turned on to. They have a lesser amount of protein, but they definitely are keto friendly, and they're sensitive. They don't have the vegetable seed oils in it. That's a whole other thing about the like MRE type stuff, supplements or shakes, I'm sorry, that are in there, is they have safflower oil. Well, that's not cool. That's inflammatory.
Yeah.
Art will nail on that real good with all the vegetable seed oils, and that's also very true as well.
Do you remember when that used to be a health food? I used to think it was a health food. I used to buy it at the store thinking it was good for me.
Oh yeah. Same channel, man. Until I got into the keto space, I didn't really know.
It's worse than sugar for you.
Yeah. I mean,
that's hard to believe, but it's worse than sugar.
Right. You talk about hyperinflammation, man. The seed oils will nail you to the wall on that.
Yeah.
You don't even know it. Well, if you're hyperinflamed, what's going to happen? Especially if you have to if you take on a statin, well, you're inflaming the epithelial cells in the lining of the vascular space or the arterial space, excuse me. And the cholesterol has two major functions. It's a repair agent, and it's a precursor to the hormones for male and females. Well, it's going down there on the walls, it's hanging out, it's accumulating. That's what you get atherosclerosis from. It's because it's hyperinflamed. So where's the root cause in that? It's the stinking seed oils. And so when you use the saturated fats, the coconut and a little bit of the olives, not too bad, as long as you don't get it to a certain temperature, obviously. But those are the ones that are anti-inflammatory. Well, if we're creating hyperinflammatory spaces and we're working out, which is creating additional inflammation, and we're on this other, it just cascades. It's a big snowball and get evil, and how it relates to the drugs or not, and then the nutrient depletions on top of that. So we're just like making these major contributory problems more magnified than they really should be, even in a normal space. If we had perfect dietary input, let's just say that that's a construct on its own, but we go out and work out, we're still creating a problem there. And then, we have genetic deficiencies to a point, or there's influence, I should probably say. And then we put other inputs in there. We create the problem. And, it
Wow.
is intelligent. Okay, dadgummit. We just need to be more intelligent and mindful of what we put in, so, getting back to nature in a sense, grounding again, stuff like Barkay outlines, he has like top 10 or something, or close to that. I can't remember the exact number, but he has certain things to do, including using the CELL products, which are, again, very good nutraceuticals that will unleash a lot of, over time. They do what they say they're going to do. I can't really come out and say it, but, and again, I'm not endorsing the product per se, but I can tell you the science behind it is true. And then, and a lot of people these days are also on acid blockers, like they have reflux. Oh, Lord. The ones that are called Pepcid or Nexium or Protonix. Those are very common blockers, or even something simple as Maalox or Mylanta or Gaviscon back in the day. The ones that
I usually recommend diet Pepcid over regular Pepcid, just for the record. I'm just kidding.
Oh goodness. Yeah.
Had to.
Yeah, but
Sorry to interrupt.
no,
But while I'm interrupting, I'm just going to throw this in there too.
no, it's
On episode 130 of our show, we had Matthew Kershaw. He's a carnivore coach in Australia, and we actually discussed at length LDL triglycerides. And so a lot of what you're saying is making even more sense than it made back then. But if anybody would like to listen further on that, that'd be a great one to check out. And then episode 129, conveniently right before that, is actually when I had Bart K on, and we talked all about the truth about calories, gluconeogenesis, insulin, and a lot more. So yeah, sorry, back to you, sir.
No, absolutely. No problem at all. Yeah. Like, so, Bart, I know has touched on this several times too. He's not a fan of statins, as we were getting into that dive. But one of the other bigger medications classes, there are several classes of this, but the proton pump inhibitors, the histamine H2 agonists and so forth. But basically it comes down to Pepsid and those names I just gave a while ago. Those are at a big risk of depleting B12. Yeah, well, B12 is pretty important for blood reasons and energy, bone health, heart health. You need to replenish that. So if you're like you're on any of these anti-acid blocker type products, you need B12 and much more, including possibly a B complex, a good B complex. That would be ideal, and it's simple. One pill once a day, so to speak. And you're already taking maybe one pill once a day or twice a day, depending upon what one you're using as far as a prescription or a non-prescription drug. But the B vitamins are depleted. Not cool. B vitamins are extremely important, especially if you consume alcoholic beverages. On top of that, again, so the normal Western standard diet kind of deal, we stink at it. And again, my personal experience with that is you need to have in my opinion, because if we're converting from one macro type of diet to another, i.e. from say standard American diet to a more efficient one, more proper human diet, keto carnivore straight up, we have to have some nutrition in the micros, not the macros, but of course the macros will come with it, supplementation. And if you're still continuing your prescription drugs, you're still having nutrient depletions. So you've got to be very delicate in the architecture. If there's a conversion, if there, and even if you don't convert, if you're just going to stay, okay, I'll eat what I want to, when I want to, how I want to, you've got to replace nutrients. And then if you have the drugs on top of that, yes, here we go again in the same circle. You're gonna lose some, and it's just setting it up for other failures. So it's best to understand that and work with someone who's competent and very knowledgeable about that. And get with a provider that either has somebody in their corner that knows it, or that they are themselves very well educated in that area.
100%. So glad. I'm not so glad about this. I'm partly glad that my wife is stacking hay bales and not a part of this conversation, because I can see this going into a huge. I can see this going into the direction of okay, so why is everybody advocating a standard American diet? Why is everybody advocating to track calories and eat everything in moderation, even though we know for sure that it doesn't work? It's almost like there's people with an agenda that want us to be unhealthy so that they can be fixing our problems on the back end with band-aids that they came up with, vaccines, you name it, and so that and not allowing us to take our health into our own hands. Would you say that there's some truth to that?
Absolutely, no doubt. Big pharma and big food industry, or big agri, or whatever you want to call it, they are technically in bed together, and they don't want you to see it come out in the light. It's kind of like there's a series out there on the boob tube, so to speak, these days called Dark Side of the Ring, because I'm a wrestling fan, and that's kind of the side of the rings. You know what I'm saying? And it's just not cool. But it's billions of dollars in industry. And so they want to keep you on that Ferris wheel. And the more information, empowering, and education we can give folks to what is there, hey, I'm all about it. and I'll do my part. I'm not going to say I know everything, because I don't. That's the only one person I knew in this planet was Jesus Christ, that knew everything, and God Himself, so to speak.
Amen.
But I'll just do my part, because that's what I was called to do, my friend.
Yeah. So do you see like child vaccines and things like that? Do you think that even that would have could possibly have a potential to cause nutrient deficiencies that would result in things like autism, delayed learning disorders, things like that?
I think there's always a risk, because think of what is innate in the human body was designed by the Creator. And we don't have a deficiency of vaccines or other things. We put things in our body, and I'm guilty as what for this too. Everybody's fallen short of it. It's just the way it is. Whether they acknowledge there's God or they're atheist or what doesn't, okay, fine, that's their call. But that's fact. And so yes, there can be induced nutrient depletions potentially. I don't know of any at this time that come to my head in my experience of vaccine, but I can tell you there's a contributory factor that has been documented, and in my opinion, on these things like the preservatives in vaccines, like it's called the Mecial. It's a mercury derivative. Now there's been contra papers to say no, it doesn't do a thing, but in my opinion, why would you want to give a child a product of mercury? I mean, if we, like when I was a kid, we still had the opportunity to play with this little silver-looking liquid, and it was mercury. It was like a little lead-mercury combination. That's toxic to the human cells. So why in the world do we want to put it in there to preserve a product that's going to, it's designed, at least the intent was to give us freedom from a certain disease or illness. Why would you put aluminum or the Mecial mercury derivative in a vaccine? My goodness, that doesn't make any sense to me outside of just the potential concept of preserving the integrity of the product. But I know they're preservative-free vaccines. I've dispensed them. I know that they are. So anybody who, in my opinion, adult, child, whomever, if there are any vaccines, and I'm going to go outside on the COVID vaccine, which is a whole other ball of wax, and it's not really a vaccine, by the way, according to the 21 CFR Federal Register. But anyways, it should be a preservative-free vaccine, in my opinion. And so that in its own right, I think that those preservatives can lead to other escalated conditions, especially if you have quantitative or multiple vaccines given at young ages, like it's typically done. You have your DTaps, you have your pertussis, or just different things, influenzas every season. Some of those vaccines, if they are not preservative free, have the preservatives. Well, they're given in quantitative series. You're having multiple exposures to, say, potentially the preservatives that you don't want, or the inductions of that. That's not cool.
Wow. I
don't like that. So it's a risk of elimination. So if anybody's, in my opinion, going to get a vaccine, it should be always preservative free. That's what I would do. And then when the COVID vaccines came out, the technology not only may not have preservatives, or it may not. You just don't know until it listed on the side of the box, and they have to disclose it as the inert ingredients. My opinion is, let's not use the mRNA technology for which it's not intended. Because I remember reading and hearing a interview with the creator of the mRNA technology for COVID, or the technology, the COVID vaccine. Some of the COVID vaccines were made on. My opinion is, he's like, he just said, I didn't create the mRNA technology for this purpose, because he didn't know what's going to happen. Well, that's probably another podcast and a deeper dive if we ever want to dive into that. But, so when I had to get COVID vaccines for employment purposes, I took the non-mRNA technology by intent. Well, they were saying, well, it's less effective. And I'm like, I don't care. And I had COVID twice. But you know what? Here I am, alive and alive.
I had COVID. I had COVID twice, never took the vax, and it sucked. I mean, it probably would have sucked just as good with the vax, but I was like, you know what? I'll take my chances without it. And no disrespect to anybody that did or didn't take it. I mean, that's your own decision. It's a sensitive subject to begin with. But I mean, I think we were all scared and we didn't know what to do. We didn't have enough information, and we all just made our best choice at the time, huh?
Yes, exactly. And you know what's also kind of funny, equally, is there certain nutraceuticals that can suppress viral replication? Believe it or not, it's been demonstrated, at least in a tube. When COVID got hit us, I started doing some research for my own sake and my mother's sake, as my father had already passed away. But I was on the COVID, like there were certain nutraceuticals when COVID struck. I started looking into, based upon initial empirical evidence, that will slow viral replication. One of those is a supplement called quercetin. If you take, that's Quercetin, quercetin has been demonstrated in studies, and those studies that I found, and as much as I understand from what I read, and I may be off base, and maybe Barkay would be like, hey, he teared me apart on it. I don't know. But from what I understood, it slowed viral replication, quercetin by itself, at about 800 or 1,000 milligrams a day. And that, along with resveratrol, the extract from like grapes, basically, that also in a tube, and in one of the studies I saw, slowed viral replication. So I started taking those two supplements. Well, when I didn't acquire the COVID then, but when I kind of, they got, I guess, a lot of media attention in certain aspects and reigns, that the supply became dwindled and the demand became high, obviously, and the price went up. So it got a little stupid. And so I stopped buying them. But then after I stopped taking them for a while, because the price point at the time, well, guess what? I had COVID. I'm not going to correlate and say that, okay, because I didn't take those two supplements, and zinc, another one, a specific kind of zinc, that I would have, if I had kept taking them, I would have not had COVID. No, I can't tell you that. That would be irresponsible. But what I can say is that those have demonstrated, at the least, how to slow it down and maybe not be such a bad outbreak. In fact, one of the original protocols when COVID was at a very big incline before the first vaccine ever came out, there was a math protocol, and zinc was one of the equations in that. I think it was at 50 milligrams daily. And a lot of facilities, hospitals, they were putting the math protocol to use, and they were using a format of zinc that's not proper, in my estimation, because of the size of the molecule. You don't get a lot of conversion. Going back to that thing again. And when you take something like zinc, you really need to have it chelated with an amino acid so bioavailability will increase, because zinc in its own right is a big molecule, structurally speaking, so to speak. So, something like zinc glycinate, that's going to be your key for zinc supplementation, period. Whether you're doing it for, say, an immune enhancement, or say for dudes who need to make sure they don't keep the boys producing testosterone. That's very important, because like zinc sulfate, zinc gluconate, it's just too big, and you're gonna lose a lot in the transfer or the processing. Again, that's where my specialty kind of hangs out. So always binding amino acid with zinc is a smart idea for all purposes in that capacity. I mean, I could go on forever, probably. So like I say, you're saying earlier about the acid blockers, deplete zinc. Well, yeah. Well, what kind of zinc do you need? Well, let's get the right kind. If one is bound to an amino acid, the cell's can be like, oh, it's an amino acid. It's easier to absorb. So boom, here we go. So that's again where the expertise comes in, not just for me, but other people's that are educated well in that capacity. So that's just one way of looking at it. Even for like those who are on antidepressants, I mean, God knows there's tons of people on them. I don't like the class of drugs. I don't care what kind it is, in my opinion. And I will never ever take an antidepressant, ever, because it's just all the nasty histories of it. I mean, the B vitamins are depleted from that. So again, B complex,
And antidepressants have messed up a couple people in my family. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just not cool. There's ways to navigate that. And again, I'm not going to trash the antidepressants because there might be a clinical time and place for everything. And I agree with that for all drugs too, pretty much. But long term, no way in the world, man. No way. And so if you're losing your B's off of that, no. And another factor in the B world is typically let's take a B vitamin B6. It's pyridoxine. It's used for energy production. There's some purportants that it's good for fat loss. It's also good for definitely energy in the red blood cells. That's where it's really viable. But your body has to take pyridoxine hydrochloride, which is typically the format of B6 in a B complex or by itself, and convert it to pyridoxal 5-phosphate. Well, why in the world would I want to take a product that I need to convert and I'm losing against stuff in a transfer when there's a commercially available shelf-stable product that it already has pyridoxal 5-phosphate in it as a B6 source? Hey, that just go for it. And then they go in the thiamine, and then another B vitamin, B1. If I want B1, I want the bentothiamine, which is the bioavailable format of thiamine hydrochloride, which is B6. So I'm like, I want to have that in my prep. So if I'm going to supplement with something, I want to have the bioavailable if it's available and stable in the preparation. That's a whole nother segue series and so forth that goes into is, okay, if I need this supplement based upon whether it be a SAD diet, so to speak, or SAD, standard American diet, Western diet, whatever it is, all the way through to actually replacing the nutrient depleted by medications or all the above or other conditions known. Why would I not want to have the most optimized format? Of course I would. I don't have to, and I'm, my age, I'm almost 50 years old. I don't convert as easily as a fellow your age. So to me, let's get the best thing I can do for the best bang of the buck. And there's plenty of them out there. I typically, again, this is not an endorsement. There's swansonvitamins.com. They have a pretty good line of supplements and stuff. And I have select ones I specifically use for me and my mother and other people I've talked to, and they're cost effective and they're very specific in how I approach it. I've had my 81-year-old mom on vitamins for almost 20 years, and she still acts like she's my age, basically. So she's going. She's still, there's some, challenges as we age. She has a few of those, but nothing like. But her numbers, labs, all this stuff, they're like really cool for her age, and she's got her friends that are like falling apart. And so I finally got her on the ketovore area, and she feels so much more energetic. And she's not hardly doing any strenuous stuff, but she can go all day and, pull weeds out of the yard or something.
Wow.
And hot Texas sun. So it's crazy. So, I mean, there's something to be said for the keto carnivore space. There's something to be said. Okay, keep moving, keep doing stuff, lift some heavy stuff, every once in a while, like 2 or 3 times a week. And, have a good attitude and outlook, and if you need some nutraceuticals because you're on prescription drugs for condition, okay, but let's look for those nutrient depletions too.
Absolutely. There are so many different topics I want to go back to and revisit and certainly spend some more time on in the future. In particular, vaccines. I would like to talk to you and my wife off the air at some point about those regarding our kids. We just did all the stuff that we thought we were supposed to do because we didn't know any better, and just gave them everything that the doctors recommended, and now we're paying for it. But carnivore diet is, it's really helpful to people that are victims of, I guess we should say, side effects of these drugs, and I really think that your expertise could really help us with that. So
Sure.
I'd really like to, if that's all right.
Sure, absolutely.
I guess just to wrap up, I did a quick search while you were talking on zinc on best dietary places to find zinc, and of course everything that comes up is just straight up red meat. and then a handful of plant products, and then I'm looking at coenzyme Q10, and same thing, fatty fishes, red meats, and it's like, why would you? There's such a big supplementation and drug industry around these topics, and I mean, what does this all keep boiling down to? You cut out carbohydrates, you go ketovore, and 99% of all these problems just fix themselves.
Pretty much. Yeah, that's the key. And, the thing is, if you have trouble like me eating quantitative meats, which I'm a carnivore by design, because I since I was a kid, I hated vegetables and fruits. I don't like them at all because there was technical issues that I didn't like. And I never got through it. And even though you got to eat your veggies and stuff, and I'm like, no way. Since I was
and that's what everybody tells their kids, and we mean well, but it's like, the kid doesn't want to eat fruit and vegetables, but the kid wants to eat meat. That's what our kids want. It's like, maybe the kid's trying to tell you something that they just don't know how to articulate.
Yeah, I think Dr. Berry and Bonnie Blue and his son's name slips my mind right now, but they raised them on keto or carnivore pretty much all their life outside the mother's milk and so forth, and they're thriving and they're great. And so why want to throw down some crap that tastes like crap? I don't.
Exactly.
I'll knock the vegetable folks. I can't, because I got to honor their space, just be respectful of the persons. But there's no way in the world. When I did several years, probably 10 years ago, I tried the 8CG diet and to lose weight, and I did. And it was calorie restriction, so to speak, and 700 calories per day, which was in its own right insane once I learned the truth.
Let me guess, it worked, but it wasn't sustainable.
That's correct. And I had to eat freaking spinach, and I don't like cruciferous taste. It's nauseating to me.
Oh, it's gross.
And so I chewed on it, and I was like, I can't do this. So I started wrapping it up like in a little ball and swallow it like a pill.
Remember all those days, man. I wish I could take all those experiences back of putting freaking kale and every green leafy vegetable you could imagine into protein shakes, blending it up with oats and berries and a banana, thinking that my body needed the carbs because that's what the whole world was telling me. And you just look deeper and deeper into the science, and you start realizing, you know what? You cut out carbs here again. You cut out carbs, you eat meat, and 99% of everything fixes itself. But just nobody wants to hear that. Nobody wants to give up their treats. Nobody wants to give up their carbs. And it's like, food shouldn't be viewed as entertainment. Food should be that's abusing your body. There's plenty of other ways to entertain yourself. Food is fuel. It should make you healthy, and it should make you a better business person, and it should make you better. It should make you a better parent. You should sleep better. It should be. It should enhance every area of life. And for someone else to tell you what you should and shouldn't eat, and if they're not a nutritionist and not a health coach, shame on them.
Agreed. And a lot of nutritionists and health coaches, they're still preaching the carbo channel. And no, I mean, I can't say that I haven't ate another carb since I converted pretty much to keto carnivore. No, I can't tell you that, because I've cheated. But I own it. I'll own my cheat.
Yeah.
So, that's okay. But whenever I have recently been hypertrophic in exercise, I'm like, okay, there's something there, and I have relief from carbohydrate. Mm-hmm. Like it just processes so much more efficiently and fast. It's in and out kind of deal. Or so it seems in my understanding, because my total scale weight hasn't changed much. Even when I'm building the muscle mass, and I used to be a very puny guy, and courtesy of you, my friend, I'm getting some tough stuff.
Look at those biceps.
To you, bro. I mean, so that, and putting in the sauna workout with the high heat shock proteins and so forth, that's been pretty critical, and I think we're going to some new levels. And it's just going to take time, because I'm metabolically older, and changes are slower. So. I'm almost in my 38 size jeans again. That was my high school weight.
Right on. Congratulations.
Yeah, I went from a 46 a year and a half ago down almost to 38. I'm probably at a 40 or 39. And I can
Right on.
still tight, but I can get in them now. Whereas before, it's like, no way, bro. Your adipose tissues is like, I'm not letting you creep that crap in, you know. But yeah, it's amazing, and it's really not a total number change on the scale by any. I mean, it is obviously that, but it's a reconfiguration, and so obviously muscle weighs more than fat, but I'm more metabolically efficient now. I'm not diabetic anymore. I completely reversed my diabetes. The only thing I got left is some mild hypertension, and I think in time that's going to change with the continuance of the keto carnivore space. And, hopefully what I do consume has enough B vitamins and all the ingredients I need. And that's my goal. And if I don't, then I supplement. That's okay. I mean, maybe I just can't consume 2.5 pounds of ground beef a day. I can't stomach it. Physiologically speaking, not because it's irritating. It's just I can't it's too much volume or mass in that capacity. So I have to supplement somehow to get the metrics right on
Mhm.
the. And I'm cool with that. I just got to make it sure it's not inefficient or has seed oils in it or something like that. So, you know, welcome to powdered protein with low carbs and some heavy whipping cream.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Your adherence to your diet. You've been, I would say you're what, like probably 6 or 7 days a week, and then like one day every other week.
Yeah, pretty
Kind
much.
of a rough day. Is that how you've been doing?
Too much. I try not to. Now, this past week, I must admit, I've been kind of off scale. Uh, Going to a Ranger baseball game, Texas Ranger baseball. I kind of screwed up, but and then I happened to
Hard to
discover.
find health foods at sporting events.
Oh yeah, yeah. And then I discovered one of my favorite wrestlers of all time, Stone Cold Steve Austin. I didn't really realize this, but he had his own line of beer, and it's man. And so, and I used to be a big beer dude, but I'm like not anymore. But I found that, and I'm like, oh. So,
Yeah.
uh, I've consumed a few cans of his beer, and we're talking maybe no more 5 in probably the past week and a half, and they're not big. They're 16-ounce tall boys, and it's like 4% alcohol, but not. It's just like, okay, but it's carbs in there, man. So I'm like, okay, I gotta cut that crap out. And if I do drink alcohol, and on a ketovore approach, and I found this to be personally non-efficacious or efficacious for the sense of, okay, if you're going to consume alcohol and if you need it for sleep, I do it for sleep purposes only. I don't do it to get intoxicated. I don't care about that. I'm not that young, and I don't really care for that anymore. But I do it for sleep purposes because like melatonin doesn't work and other non-prescription drugs work, and I can't take like Ambien and stuff like that. That's just not appropriate in my space. But if I do, I'm drinking vodka or a clear liquor, and that doesn't add to my waistline or change my weight. It just increases. Well, I can tell you that there's probably some hyperinflammatory processes associated with the alcohol consumption. But I mitigate that through exercise, the sauna, and that plus also certain supplements. So that's the way I scientifically navigate it. And in my lab numbers, at last measure, last measure was about almost 3 months ago. Everything was at the normal limits, except for my testosterone was it's on low end normal, and that's kind of where you and I got together after I seen the video with you and Bart K.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's do some build. And I mean, I have depot test shots, but I really don't want to start junking that crap because I know what it can do. And it'll do its job, but I don't want to shut my boys down. And at
You're
50,
talking about like exogenous testosterone?
correct, yes. And
Mhm.
I don't want to do that unless I have no other choice, or because I had testosterone 2 or 3 years ago when I was 355 pounds. I'm now at 268, and I'm 6'4". I had a testosterone that was less than 100. That's bad, clinically speaking.
Yeah, that's like 80-year-olds.
Exactly. So that was because I was excessively estrogenic, my adipose and fat tissue. So I had to go on shots at the time, and I really wasn't compliant. I took a testosterone product from Douglas Laboratories. It's called Testogain. That seemed to bump it up to 180s, 200s by itself it's an adaptogenic response instead of going to hit the needles. And I just don't like that. And, what I do now is when you go to the gym and get, work with your programs like you're putting together for me, man, that's building testosterone and getting your boys to say, okay, we got to get back in gear, make sure we have some zinc, and proper ingredients, do our thing, and, hitting the meats, man. Those ingredients right there will throw you back in the right direction. Now we'll see next month or two what my T level's at from where it was almost 3 months ago. But, I'm hoping it'll be higher because I've been in the gym doing stuff instead of on my butt, even though I've been losing weight because I've been eating better and cleaner and right, the proper human diet way. So we'll find out. But if not, then we'll reevaluate. But, I'm an older dude, so, I just don't want to hit that stuff. And in the pharmaceutical world, shots are going to be a direct, immediate influence. Transdermal gels like testosterone replacement gels, they'll do the job, but it takes more time and more quantity. And I'm not saying it's bad. It's just you got to evaluate where you're at clinically. But when you put endogenous testosterone out there, you shut your factories down. Your own works are going to shut down. So you become physically dependent upon that testosterone contribution outside of your own manufacturing, so to speak. And that can be clinically problematic, as you well know. So, to me, I'm like, is it time for HCG? Because that'll stimulate your testosterone growth, but it also can be estrogenic in a way. And then you have to go on possibly a Arimidex or an aromatase inhibitor, which is a whole nother ball of wax. But, I prefer to, lesser drug, maximum effect. Let's stick to this thing.
Yeah. And then things like Arimidex and Novadex typically have side effects of their own too, right?
Every drug, no matter what it is, even if it's simple, over the counter, unless it's just Tylenol, it has a side effect. Tylenol will deplete glutathione stores in the liver, and actually to reverse a heavy, if there was a chronic user of Tylenol, to reverse the potential toxic effects on the liver, you can take N-acetylcysteine to reverse that, because that's the antidote to Tylenol poisoning. So it's, and N-acetylcysteine in its own right is interesting itself because it's an antioxidant, and it's a precursor to the master antioxidant called glutathione, and everybody needs that to be truthful. Especially anti-aging, it's also antitussive. N-acetylcysteine will actually help them loosen up bronchial secretions to not make them stick so much, and kind of like what Robitussin does. That's over the counter. And especially was handy in COVID world. Another fun thing, another fun fact for the day.
Totally.
Yeah.
Back to your biceps. You were touching our conversation earlier last week. You were talking about how correct me if I'm wrong. You wanted to see better definition and more mass on your pecs and on your triceps to be able to catch up with the biceps.
Yes. So like when I'm doing the tri exercises, I'm feeling it in the arm at the time of the actual motions, but it's not like there's the pump sustain, whereas the biceps, when I'm doing their exercises, there's more pump left over after not the exercise itself, but the day after or something like that. There's more rotund definition or something. And so I'm wondering if I'm not doing it right enough to keep the pump on the triceps and the pecs, respectively, in the same situation. It's just, it seems like I don't know if there's a development issue with me. I don't think so, but just kind of, if I'm going to have a bigger bicep, I should have an opposite effect on the tris, and have some type of leftover definition. And I think that I'm absent there, and I'm not sure as to why.
Yeah, so you're on an upper body split and a lower body split, both workouts to be done at home. And I'm looking at your upper body day right now. First thing that I did just now is I just upped your volume on your first superset, which is side lateral raises with dumbbell skull crushers. I'm gonna I've never had an issue with not being able to get a pump on that exercise. shoot me a video if you don't mind next time doing that exercise, but I'm going to go ahead and have you do another set of it now that I have a better idea of your muscle imbalances from the waist up. So make sure so every time you do a tricep exercise, it should be the opposite of a bicep exercise. You should be thinking of it that way. Okay. So when you're doing a bicep curl, you always start with your tricep flexed, just so you can see the horseshoe, and then curl it all the way up to the top. And then that's how you know that you're getting a full stretch and a full pump, which is actually why I never advocate static stretching, just stretching in place, because if you're doing this throughout your workout, you're stretching and you're working your muscles at the same time.
Gotcha.
So that would be curl form. Now for skull crushers, you're laying on a bench and your hands are over your head like this.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's the same idea. You should be able to you should think of it as a bicep curl to start the exercise. So your biceps are totally flexed, and then your forearm is actually touching your bicep. So that's a starting position. And then when you twist, that's why I have you twisting in the demo video, is because that's what starts with stretching out that long head, and then finishes with fully flexing the lateral head and the medial head. It's your 3 triceps heads. So I would suggest doing it like that next time. And if you're still not getting a good enough pump, let me know and we'll find a different exercise. How about that?
Sounds good.
Cool. And then for pec work, I think you've been on this plan for a couple weeks anyway. So on your next plan, I'm going to make a note to challenge you a bit more with your pecs. I don't know. I'll do some thinking. Probably low incline presses. It's kind of my favorite thing to do. You got heavy dumbbells, right?
I have pounders, but I can use the ones at the rec center that I go to modify that. I typically stick between the hammer machines and the knotless when I'm doing all the above exercises. And then I go into the sauna, like I talked to you about, and do where I take my 2 10-pounders and I do like punches and stuff, and I rotate like 180 degrees each time I'm doing like that, basically. And that seems to get where the delts are worked good, the bis are working good, but tries are not hitting it. And then when I'm doing inside the sauna, I also do I keep it at 90 degree here, and I'm pushing the dumbbells and go into a full flex where I'm crunching my scapulas and going like this. And then sometimes I have one sustain like this.
Oh, so you bring a bench into the sauna with you?
Oh yeah. Well, they have a bench in there already, and I just kind of do one arm at a time.
Oh, good. Well, heck, there we go. That makes more sense then.
Flop out, like, when I'm doing the overheads, I'm doing that one arm at a time when I have one arm out, and then it kind of like that. But it's also, there is a limited range of motion to that sauna facility when you got people coming in and out too. So that's another factor. Because I'm 6'4".
Oh,
That's big, pretty big portion of the bench that's there.
Yeah. Cool. And so it's not an adjustable bench then. It's just the bench that's in the sauna.
Standard seat they have in the sauna. It's the cedar wood or whatever it is.
Okay. So your gym workouts or at home, whenever you're doing a press for the chest, I want you doing at a low incline. So it's not going to be a full incline press, because that'll be more front delt dominant, which is actually kind of what I do, because I'm focusing more on front delts than I am my pecs. Any time that you're doing direct chest work for aesthetics, cannot go wrong with low incline presses.
Okay.
So that's the direction that I was headed. Your plan with your plan for the next phase too. So I'll just revise that and shoot it to you over an email. But just a heads up. That's kind of what I want you doing for chest work. It makes sense.
Yeah, we're good, man. Yeah, cool.
All right. Well, I think that's a wrap. Certainly plenty more that we have to talk about. But this is not going to be the last time that we record together. So until then, where can people go to find more about you, sir?
Well, my medical practice is, of course, it's MIDSOUTHTRANSITIONS.org. That is the name of the medical practice that does the house calls and telemedicine. I'm featured there a little bit. Not that it's not about me. It's about who we take care of for those entrusted to our care. But that's a way to find me. We're based out of Texarkana, Texas, which is basically on the border of Arkansas and Texas. But we service basically 3 states right now and growing. So that's kind of what I do there. Then I work full time at a hospital here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area at nights, which I'm about to start again here real soon. That's a heck of a challenge, ready from days and nights, especially at my age. But I got enough fortification to do it and still can go. But MIDSOUTHTRANSITIONS.org is my website for the medical practice. And then eventually I'll have a few more websites, and eventually as well, it is my intent to have start my own channels like what you do, Colt, and go from there to empower and inform and educate folks on things like the drug-induced nutrient depletions. As I think it again is an epidemic that is served and will benefit greatly from the information out there, all the way through to actually doing it daily in a grind, say at a facility or a medical clinic.
Totally. And you are, I'm going to put a link to that in the show notes. And you are also on Instagram. I know not very active on Instagram, but most of our listeners are. So would you please let us know where they can find you there?
Even is, man. I just know I have an account. If you happen to find it for me, man, if you won't put in a link, that's cool too. But
I'll find it right now. I'm pretty sure it's Sean Woods. Something about it. Here we go.
Got some goofy.
It's SEAN.WOOD.3158. So yeah, don't expect to see anything mind blowing there because he doesn't post anything, but you'll be able to get a hold of him at least.
Right. But on LinkedIn, I do have a Mid-South page, personal and a personal per se business profile. I'm out there on LinkedIn. I am on Facebook, like millions of people are, but that's kind of more of a personal type of thing. But hey, if you want a friend, that's cool. No big deal. But I typically watch LinkedIn, and I'm learning how from actually you and many other social media space folks per se to navigate social media, because I am definitely a dinosaur learning new tricks. And I'm going to utilize not only the content that we created here today, but going forward in future sessions that I greatly appreciate the invitation to continue, and I'm gladly accepting thereof for your clientele, your audience, and definitely for those who will just be able to be changed by some of the stuff that we all offer collectively together for the right reasons and giving glory back to the Creator himself.
That's what everything ultimately comes back to. Amen. Thanks for that. Well, Sean, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so very much for your time, for your expertise. I mean, look at this, dude. These are the notes that I took today, just now, on everything you said.
Oh my.
So I got some studying and some more homework to do. I'm learning and growing every day, just like you are. And iron sharpens iron, man. I love this relationship, love the friendship we have, and I just pray that it continues for a long, long time, man.
All right, you're gonna need new book soon.
That's right.
All right, my friend.
Well, God bless you, sir. We'll talk soon.
All right, see you, man.
Yeah, you bet.
Okay, bye now.
Hey podcast, it's Taylor signing off for us this time, saying thanks so much everyone for listening to this interview with Colt and Sean. It's amazing what we don't need to supplement when we continue to take care of our health on the front end. Our hope and prayer is that this show continues to be a resource for you to do just that. If you found this helpful, please pay it forward by sharing with a friend. Your ratings and reviews got us to where we're at. If you're not subscribed, please do so that we can continue to grow the channel and share the knowledge. Thank you so much in advance. We announce our podcast review of the week on Monday, so our store review is from Dominique McCarver from Vacaville, California. I really like that the transalenal glutamine I had last night after my workout, and I'm not sore at all. I will order more soon. Thanks so much, Dominique. She's referring to transalenal glutamine, TAG for short, which we prefer over L-glutamine because it's more bioavailable and easier for your body to use. Colt and I both use it as needed when our recovery from our workouts need a little more assistance. Plenty in stock at supersetyourlife.com. All purchases support the channel. One last thing, if you haven't heard about Colt and Mark's new podcast with Jonathan Griffiths, it's called Carnivore Coaches Corner. They collaborate weekly to discuss listener questions, frequently asked questions at their one-on-one consults, trending topics related to the carnivore diet, and hypertrophy training.
If you're a fan of the low-carb lifestyle or just getting into it, you can find them by searching Carnivore Coach's Corner on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Radio Public, Anchor, and Overcast. Thanks, everybody. God bless, and we'll catch you on episode 171.